Hello, I'm Rain, and this is my presentation on the life, work, and impact of Ivan Pavlov. So, to start out with his life, he was born in Ryazan, Russia in September 26th of 1949. He was born to his father, Peter Pavlov, who was a Russian Orthodox priest, and his mother, Varvara Uspenskaya. During his early childhood, he sustained a serious injury from a bad fall, and because of him being housebound, it led him to be more curious about natural science. He was enrolled in religious school at 11 and then later went on to attend St. Petersburg University. There he studied medicine upon graduation under Sergei Petrovich Botkin at the Imperial Academy of Medical Surgery. He became director of the physiological laboratory at Botkin's clinic. He married his wife Serafina in 1881 and they had 5 children. During his career, his mentors included I.F. Sion and S.P. Botkin, who worked in the lab with Claude Bernard, whom Pavlov admired and gained interest in the study of neurism. During his childhood, he spent a lot of time with his religious father and was taught by his grandfather. He decided to quit seminary school to ready himself for admission into St. Petersburg. He studied the natural sciences at St. Petersburg and found inspiration from D.I. Pisarev and I.M. Sechenov. Due to the inspirational figures above to Pavlov, he was led to study in the field of physiology. He finished his course with exceptional scores and gained candidacy for a degree in natural sciences, but decided to pursue work in physiology instead. An interesting fact is that during the course of his work, the Soviet Union took interest and even donated money to his work, but Pavlov was actually a great detester of the Soviet Union during the time. He then passed away at the age of 86 on the 27th of February in 1936 in Leningrad, Soviet Union, from old age. Pavlov conducted his famous research with dogs and digestion. So he discovered that upon hearing a bell, dogs began salivating, which led to the discovery of classical conditioning. It began by surgically creating openings in the dog's salivary glands and parts of the digestive tract to track and measure excretions. So it was also noted that saliva secretion decreased over time when the dogs were shown saliva-inducing objects. So to re-engage this saliva response, Pavlov noted that you just simply have to let the dogs eat the food in order to re-engage that response. He also believed that food was the one thing that connects all living things back to nature. And the first major path that food must pass through is the canal, which is digestion. He believed this canal to be connected in the outside to the outside through the surface of the body, but it is instead turned inward. He describes the process of digestion as several laboratories, each with their own setup and equipment and responsibilities. So the process goes that food transfers from one lab, and then it does its thing, and then it's transferred on to the next lab. So these labs provide certain mechanical or chemical digestion of food while also making sure to expel any harmful material to the body. And there's also a particular tissue that communicates with the body and provides the necessary digestive aids. He also notes that the use of ferments is very important for digestion. Particularly, the pancreas is part of measuring the stomach acid levels and excreting the necessary juices for digestion. The 3 types of these ferments excreted by the pancreas include um, starches, proteins, and fats. So the protein ferment is especially important because it remains inactive due to its potential danger to the starch and fat ferments. And in order to activate the protein ferment, an additional ferment is released to activate it. So his work, once the protein ferment is activated and comes into contact with food, it loses its hazardous components. Pavlov also came up with the saying specificity of the stimuli, which is the idea that certain stimuli introduced to receivers or organs emits a specific response. So one of these organs being the salivary glands, and when food is introduced to the salivary glands, they elicit a specific response, which is one of the major things that Pavlov studied with his dogs. So to start off, there were two important operations that were conducted in order to set up the experiment with the dogs. So the first one was connecting a tube. So the tube that connected the stomach and the mouth, it was severed, and then the ends of the tubes were taken and stitched to the throat to prevent the normal passage of food, and then the food would then fall out through another opening in the tube. The second operation was the insertion of a metal tube into the stomach through the abdominal wall, and this was the tube that the food was put into for the dogs. So the dogs were then fasted and then the stomachs washed before food was given through the traditional way by mouth. But because of how it's set up, it falls out of the opening. And then they use, once the food is introduced, the juices begin excreting into the empty stomach within just minutes. And then these juices can then persist and remain in the stomach um, even when the fake feeding is finished. And then the juices were measured, and their importance in treating those that suffer from low levels of digestive juices were also noted. Because of this work, he was awarded the Nobel Prize in 1904. And then this here is just like a diagram of how the dogs were set up and how the saliva was measured. So his impact, it is still used, and classical conditioning is still studied and used today. So in one study, researcher Peter B. Barella used classical conditioning to study classical fear conditioning through the use of different colored lights, and found that these methods are effective in studying classical fear conditioning. So in another article, they also discuss using Pavlovian conditioning in areas such as artificial materials, even making an artificial Pavlovian dog in the use of attempting to use conditioning in these artificial materials, including robotics. And then in another study by Vladimir Wangelovi, he measured physiological responses of participants that were part of a theoretical robbery and those that were not. So this classical conditioning was to be introduced into the CIT, or Concealed Information Test, which law enforcement uses to catch guilty criminals. The participants were asked a series of unrelated and related questions about the theoretical robbery, and then these results show that those who participated in the theoretical robbery group displayed more responses when significant stimuli were present. Another study where classical conditioning was used not only for law enforcement, but also in aiding the survival of animals was done by Celeste et al., where the researchers used classical conditioning to assist venacious-breasted Amazon parrots in an attempt to recognize and avoid predators by displaying a series of images of predators such as jaguars. And then at the end of the study, it showed that the parrots were able to recognize these as predators and display the proper behaviors in avoiding them. So in conclusion, Pavlov's work provided a great advancement in the field of psychology. The discovery of classical conditioning is one of the major breakthroughs in the field and is still being studied and practiced today. Thank you.